Is the UCLA football job the hardest in the country, or is it just some made-up BS?
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for your support. This episode is brought to you by the likes of FanDuel. FanDuel is making every moment more. As playoffs wind down, tournament Olympics wind down, there's boosts and bonus open daily to all customers. Go to FanDuel.com to check it out. What we're checking out is, where does UCLA football rank as one of the toughest jobs in college football, especially at the power conference level, where there's a clear separation. Obviously, it's going to be tough when you have limited resources, when you're playing at a smaller school. If you're an independent, the UMass job is not the same thing as the UCLA job, right? There's different difficulties. So that's what we're going to separate here. When you're looking at higher level in terms of infrastructure, you look at NIL budget, where does the toughest job rank? I was looking at something, and then all of a sudden I saw Adam Brenneman, who recently posted the 4 toughest jobs in college football, one of which included UCLA. And I continue to think it's the harping of the narrative that UCLA is just awful at football. And I just, I don't believe that's true. Obviously, it's been a minute since UCLA's been into a Rose Bowl, right? But I don't think it's because it's super, super tough. We've seen some glorious moments to where, what UCLA is going to have to do. And what the little quote Brenneman was talking about is kind of what the coaches have this year, right? What's tough? What's the toughest job trying to turn around the university's team from one year to the next? And UCLA got put in a bad spot with how they failed to get rid of Chip Kelly. They decided to let him walk and make his own route out, and then hire DESHAUN Foster in a pretty impossible situation. Now, with an entire set of skill positions returning for UCLA, including QB1, your top running back, a top change of pace back, all of the top skill positions and people who did not play in 23, an offensive line that is settling into more of a starting role, although there might be injuries that might affect that. We'll touch on that later. Got an offense that really knows what it's doing. So when it comes to toughest jobs, I was kind of going back to the hiring process, and we remember PJ Fleck was trying to go from Minnesota to UCLA. Now I'm thinking about Minnesota. They got an illustrious history prior to 1960, where they dominated the sport. Many national championships in a row. They were the first school to win so many in a row. Now, PJ Fleck almost ditched Minnesota and tried to get himself to UCLA. And you can go with different reports. He went out publicly and said he spurned UCLA. And then it was looking at what I was reading from Mark Schipper from Fifth Down College Football and different sources, where it looked like UCLA said, no, we're going to go in-house or kind of keep it in a different direction. And when it comes to toughest jobs, I would think a program that hasn't won anything in a Big Ten is different than new blood in the Big Ten, which, yes, UCLA has one of the toughest schedules, toughest travel schedules this season, and they can still surprise this year, right? There's still some talent on defense. Now, the top 10 talent is gone, and they're not going to be a top 10 defense. But with some creativity from Akaka Malloy, some newer voices in different parts of the locker room for the defensive side, I think it's overblown what UCLA is doing. Back to Minnesota. I was reading a Minnesota outlet. I forget which one it was. They were previewing the Minnesota season. Went game by game as to what they would do. And why am I comparing Minnesota to UCLA? I got to what they thought the Minnesota game would look like for UCLA. UCLA coming off an 8-win season. Now the defense led a good portion of that. Minnesota, if you remember last year, was a 5-win team that made a bowl game because they had good academic scores to get them in the bowl game and win to get to 6-7. A lot of those one-score games, barely beat Bowling Green, beat Iowa, which is a strong win, but they couldn't really do anything offensively. And Minnesota's losing their quarterback. They're going to the number 1 FCS quarterback in the country. And they're convinced that It's not a game at Minnesota. It's a game at the Rose Bowl. And despite the expected uptick in attendance, a lot from road teams, there just seems to be this backwards narrative that UCLA is just going to completely suck so bad that every team with a new quarterback, every team is going to come dismantle this team defensively, where they've got an experienced D coordinator. They have guys that have played at elite levels for UCLA literally last year. Now, if they can all stay healthy, the depth is an issue. And offensively, if Eric Bieniemy can unlock what was missing last year, helped with a better, hopefully better offensive line, if the players can pick up the offensive terminology quickly, they could be in the line for an early season upset against a team we don't expect them to beat. That could range from anywhere from LSU to Oregon at home, or a late season surge, or going to Nebraska on the road when their freshman quarterback's ready to play, right? But it's hard to think when I'm looking at Minnesota saying, they're going to expect to beat UCLA on the road. Really? Really? Yes, it comes after the daunting stretch of road game, home game, road game, home game, where it's like LSU, Oregon, Penn State. It's a ridiculous stretch of games UCLA is going to play in 2024. But toughest, yes, they were in a pretty bad spot. 24, the recruiting cycle is pretty rough around the edges because Chip Kelly is mixing guys who are in their 7th year of college football, like we'll talk about with Ale Kaho. Then you're going after D3 guys making the jump to Big Ten, another little talk we'll have at the end of the podcast. In addition to hoping that the plug-and-play offensive line would work while not replenishing any freshman talent that they needed to get, or in the defensive talent. So that is where it's tough. Now, if you're comparing it to A&M, if you're comparing it to other jobs, I would like to think, what about the schools that have had zero success ever and are just stuck behind teams and traditions? Like, you go to the majority of the Big Ten, you read the numbers, it's almost always been Ohio State, Michigan, which is why it'll be fun to see the new blood in college football in the Big Ten, right? The UCLA's, SC's, Washington's, Oregon, trying to break it up in the Midwest, that everybody's just doubting and forgetting the West Coast can play some football. Oh, spread, they're not physical. UCLA is getting more physical. They're recruiting more offensive linemen. It's going to be a 1 to 2, maybe 3-year transition by the time they're ready for the increased physicality, going after the SoCal kids that are ready for Big Ten play. But there are their limitations. Everybody points to the lack of attendance, but that's going to go up. The buzz around the Rose Bowl, I believe, will be important. Now, UCLA has to win a couple of early games, and the support has to be there. Otherwise, they will be certainly overwhelmed by the road visiting fans, but there will be fans in the Rose Bowl. It won't be empty. There will be a buzz. They're going to go play in big-time stadiums with a big buzz on the road this season, the next season, and almost every season from henceforth. And some of the best stadiums are the, Autzen and Washington Stadium on the lake, right? So when it comes to lack of buzz, I'm just kind of shocked at it. Now, is it going to be extremely tough for what DESHAUN Foster has to do? No time to recruit, no time to really fix things in the portal as much as he's grabbed talent moving into the season with literally no head coaching experience. But with the veteran coaching staff, NFL experience, I think the savvy knowledge that they have can hopefully translate to an offense that returns a lot, that can move the ball. And if Garbers can make right decisions, make the right checkdowns at the line, and change things up with what he's been given with a longer leash, hopefully from Bieniemy, and a long-time college football player, I think UCLA can still shock people where the narrative is getting laughed at because DESHAUN Foster didn't have the best opening statement, between poking holes in certain things where I think come the season, we don't need them to win 10, 11 games, but there will be some fights. And if they're playing a lot of tough games on the road and putting up fight, and if it's really close, then we can showcase how close UCLA football is, right? So I disagree with Berman. That's the toughest job. It's a tough situation that DESHAUN Foster was put in, certainly, but there are reasons for optimism and hope that UCLA can shock the rest of the country that seems to forget UCLA has had any success in college football. Now, to make it to the national limelight, that's a different step, and that's what the Bruins are trying to do in this move to the Big Ten. So let's take a look at fall camp and see what's going on and what could hurt or help their chances in their open practice here on Locked On UCLA. Man, I love sports, and I never want them to stop. But the playoff season, the tournament season, the great Summer Olympics coming to an end, and we get fewer games, fewer events, fewer things to talk about. They're not going to be sportsing like we want them to until the football season really starts all around high school, college, and the pros, right? But FanDuel lets the sports keep going. You can dream up bets anytime you're in the mood, and they've got a boost or bonus daily with something for everyone every day all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com to start making the most out of the summer before it comes to an end. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Cruising on here into Locked On UCLA, we're talking fall camp news and notes from some of the latest things in UCLA practice, right? Some of the wondering was, how is the offensive line going to look? Can they look decent defensively this year in the Big Ten with a lot of changes all around the board? And can the offense lead this team to success this year? They're going to have to bail out the defense by scoring quite a few points, and the defense needs to be ball hawks and take opportunities to the next level and be an opportunistic ball hawk defense. That is really the one way this defense is going to thrive, unless Makaki Malloy brings on the schemes, brings on and adds on what Danton Lynn already did in 23 into his own views in 24. So I was looking at, different reports from practice, and then all of a sudden seeing, all right, hey, what was the battle, right? DeShaun Foster had kind of jokingly, seriously said every spot is in a positional battle as he tries to bring on more of a media savvy approach in terms of what they're going to run offensively, who's starting. But he did come out and say earlier on during the fall camp schedule and during fall camp media availability that one of their offensive line positions is open, right? It is open for battle. And while it's expected to be a transfer portal guy, Alana Machiavelli, then, we wonder where it'd go, right? You had some transfers like Ruben Unige, you had Holsteg who came out, Carlin who's moving to center, Garrett DeGiorgio who's expected to be a stalwart this year, more on him in a second. And then we didn't really know who was going to start on the left side of the offensive line, potentially. Well, how UCLA has juggled it, according to this practice, I believe Ben Bolch reported on this, they have DeGiorgio, actually right to left, excuse me. They have DeGiorgio on the right side. On right tackle, they've got Machiavelli, Carlin at center, Holsteg, and Unige. So if Carlin can make the big jump to center and do it well, that includes snap exchanges, communicating to his offensive line, pass protection, run block. There's a lot more involved with moving to center. If he can dominate that, and if UCLA can handle the little competition that Machiavelli hopefully is winning as the UNLV transfer, that can set UCLA up for success in a year where the offensive line must have a bounce-back year, right? When it came to blitz protection, UCLA was pretty rough when it came to protecting their last year true freshman quarterback, or when Garbers took the starting job back, he got blasted in the Arizona game, had to come out injured, and couldn't even play in the Arizona State game, where they would have easily won if they had a truly healthy quarterback that could do something like throw the football against the Sun Devils when they're literally running swinging gate and made UCLA look foolish in the Rose Bowl last year. Now, with Bieniemy, different offensive sets, you bring in an offensive line that has played mostly a year together, some guys who have big-bodied assets to a line that needs to get bigger, stronger, more physical to face the defensive fronts of the Big Ten, which is what the Midwest is known for, although you could counter that and say it's been mediocre offensive play for many years in Big Ten. We'll find out as that plays on. It has been Machiavelli who might be slowly trying to win that job over. It's not complete. It's not guaranteed until DeShaun Foster says anything. And at the recording of this podcast and posting of it, he has not said anything out loud that someone is a specific starter. And reality has actually said every spot is open, which is not really true, but that's what a coach says. The other thing is, right as this was being recorded, it was posted that Garrett DeGiorgio left practice, got hurt. So all that continuity one was hoping for was that DeGiorgio would be one of the real anchors of the offensive line on the right side. He left practice, got hurt, and then was able to wrap it up, jog on the sidelines. No other further update. That is ongoing as this podcast has been recorded. So that's an important note. One of the guys you would expect to start on the right side of the offensive line, while you're already having a competition with Machiavelli right there, that could be a little scary if DeGiorgio has a real long-term injury. But I believe I've read from what Mike Regalado, Bruin Report Online, he's jogging around. Ben Bolchett said, he's down there. He's in that medical injury tent. That is something a little scary when the guy you're expecting and hoping for to be a starter for all 12 games, if he gets hurt right next to the guy that's battling for his spot, that's a lot of scariness and that's a lot of instability on the quarterback's right side. Now, it's not the blind side, but you can't have guys just straight rush the quarterback right in his face and give him no time to throw. In an offense that's going to need a little bit more from the quarterback intellectually and his throwing ability this year from Garbers. Because Garbers, while he can be mobile, is not a true dual threat quarterback, even though that's not exactly needed in the Eric Bieniemy offense. So that's important. While it does seem like they are solidifying who the starters are, one might have gotten a little dinged up, which is going to happen in fall camp, one-on-one drills. But we'll find out how it ends up playing. We hope it's nothing long-term that can hurt UCLA. The opener is 3 weeks from this recording against Hawaii, and still 5 weeks until they go and play their home opener against Indiana in the Rose Bowl. Now, other things that are interesting. One, UCLA offense doing what they need to do. It's looking like Garbers really picking things up, moving on the defense, which is scary because you don't want your defense to get just blown up by the opponents, especially with their practice mates just running around first string on first string. If Garbers is going to continue to distribute the balls everywhere with Sturdivant, Loya, Titus Mokiao, Atamalala, Rico Flores Jr., the limited depth at tight end, but Maliki Matavao can bring some added presence there. The offense needs to do things. And one of the big things I think I was reading about from practice too, Jalen Davies was absent, right, from DB drills. We hope that's nothing too crazy. They just got Sharif Say cleared for the most part out of the portal. So you don't want your youngest and best secondary player in Jalen Davies to not be there. He made some big-time plays last year for UCLA in 23. When you're expecting Kirkwood on one side, Davies on another, older players as safeties in the background like Addison and such, you're hoping that in a secondary with the two transfers going to USC, that you don't have any you don't lose any starters. And keeping Davies, they don't have Alex Johnson, who was there quite a few years, earning the big number 36 in honor of Nick Pasquale. And he played well last year, did Alex Johnson, to earn that key role. You don't have that same depth, and you don't have the pass rush up front, so the secondary has to play even better. Now, again, the one thing about the Big Ten this year, you look at Minnesota, new quarterback. You look at Rutgers trying to change things around, but they should be a little stable. Freshman quarterback at Nebraska, Washington, new quarterback, Oregon, new quarterback, USC, new quarterback. And the amount of teams this year that have new quarterbacks, I highly doubt that even if the UCLA defense is going to struggle this year, that every single new freshman transfer, whatever quarterback it might be, is going to be thriving by the time they play the Bruins. Or that means their defense is just god-awful. If they get roasted every single week, which is a slight concern, but when you got teams all across the board, in this day and age of the transfer portal, that is going to happen a little more. NIL, quarterbacks might go get more money, jump FCS to D1, like what Minnesota is doing, or their starter leaving to go to another program in the Big Ten. I still think there's so many things, despite all the practices, despite all the games that'll happen by the time UCLA will play all these teams. I doubt every single first-year new fresh-faced quarterback is going to dominate UCLA, regardless of the schemes, with the travel and everything. I'm not going to say UCLA is going to be a top 10 defense. That's not going to happen this year. I don't expect that. Nobody would expect anything close to last year's production. That would be a fantastic job, and then Akaka Malloy would get hired by somebody else. But every single new quarterback still leads me to think of hope for UCLA coming forward. All right. And speaking of springing forth hope, it's Ale Kaho in a long year, long comeback, trying to return back as a UCLA player in his 7th and final year of college football. Next, a Locked On UCLA. It's getting down to the end of the summer, but that doesn't mean there's no ball games being played because Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. They make getting tickets easier, faster, and the prices on Gametime actually go down closer to first pitch. So with views from your seats, all-in pricing, and more, you can take the guesswork out of buying Major League tickets and more with Gametime because you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, theater, and more. You can see where you're sitting with a panoramic view on the app. And if you have a lowest price guarantee, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference when buying tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. The code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, wrapping things up here with what we hope to be a heartwarming story for UCLA. It's as we see many players on rosters that have to struggle, battle through injury, try to hold on to their hope in their football careers, their eligibility. And with the COVID year, some people are exhausting as much as they possibly can of it. This is about the last season you can really do so, barring some super crazy redshirts. Ale Kaho, who I remember last year the reporters would repeatedly ask Chip Kelly, ask, where's Kaho? He's not there. Is he out? Is he doing this? And this is the 6'2", super redshirt senior out of Reno, Nevada, who started his career with 3 seasons on special teams at Alabama, a national championship winner, and now has been at UCLA for 4 years. So he already started at Alabama for 3 years, right? Started his career, I should say. Was a key special teamer, started in 2018 as a late signee going into camp, and still found ways to play in 15. That's a Nick Saban coach team where you came in late, earned his spot on special teams, recovered fumbles, special team players of the week he was being named, and recovered quite a few fumbles, was a key player in Alabama on special teams, and at least has blocked 3 punts in what I've seen in separate seasons for Alabama, UCLA, twice for Alabama. A couple of those block punts have led to a couple touchdowns on special teams. And if there's ever a way UCLA needs something to happen on special teams, it is in a newly enhanced effort, which was forgotten about. A third part of the game, scoring points via field goals, field position, pinning teams deep, making things happen on punt blocks, right? That is what UCLA needed. And Kaho, who is expected to be hopefully healthy with an explosive return after injury, a help at linebacker. But even then, if he can come in, use his speed, his ability to maneuver the punt, blocking coverage, block a punt, that would be huge for UCLA. But this is a guy who was recently talking to the media, detailed how he was able to mentally overcome fighting through the injuries, right? This is what something that Kaho had to say when it came to, meeting it. This is what he said, quote, "Yeah, it's tough, but it's life, I had to leave a lot of my family and the people close to me and just stay closer to God. Obviously, it was difficult. But now looking outside, overcoming things like that, I'm just grateful. I know I keep saying it, but when you go through things like that, this is Ale Kaho speaking, just like that, you're just more grateful, more appreciative of the things you used to not have. So I would say that when he was asked about the mental aspect, the draining aspect of playing so long, dealing with injury, this is Kaho who had to battle through injury in 22. Had a couple of starts in the 21 season, blocked a punt, led to a touchdown against Hawaii last time the Bruins played them, was hurt, saw no game action in 22, played in 1 game in Coastal Carolina, nothing after that, was able to get the extra year of eligibility, and now is fighting for his time at UCLA, and he's truly developed a relationship with former UCLA Broom and former UCLA coach of recent years, Ken Norton Jr. So he had a really close relationship. You look on his bio, talked about how his favorite athlete he admires is Ken Norton Jr. And when it came to questions being asked about what he thought in the locker room, maybe not specifically the locker room, he just talked about how how deeply involved he was talking to Ken Norton, and then learning how it's like with the new linebacker coach, the new defensive coordinator. Even was asked what it's like playing with the teammate making the transition from D3 to Big Ten play like Luke Schuerman. And they've got Ale Kaho, who started his career at Alabama winning a national championship as a key special teamer, which means he was valued deeply by the Alabama staff in 2020 and in, Nick Saban's eyes when he was still the coach there. So it's just a unique experience what UCLA has in the linebacker room. A guy who truly loved a Bruin in Ken Norton Jr. before he left, after Chip Kelly left. Then you had a guy who's trying to make the transition, even commented limited on that, and says there's a lot of new guys, haven't had a lot of conversation with him. But it's a unique linebacker room with guys who've been around for so long, making huge jumps. We're expecting big things from Kane Medrano, hopefully, and Femi Oladejo, as their roles will expand. And for this defense to be truly successful, Ikaika Malloy is going to have to expand upon what D'Anton Lynn did, in addition to being creative. And I think the thought was maybe you'll see a hybrid role with Medrano, turning him more of an edge rusher. Because Latu is theoretically a linebacker, right? He was linebacker, edge rusher, turned into straight rushing the quarterback, and was elite at it after overcoming injury. Now, I'm not saying that, Kaho is going to come out and be a Latu, but hopefully he can come out, and with his record, literally years across college football, literally a generation or two of college football athletes, he has been an elite special teamer and can hopefully make a play or two that changes a game where UCLA is not winning, or just changes the tide of a game that was 50-50 coming in for the Bruins in Big Ten play or non-conference play. And sometimes when you see a guy work that hard to work back from injury last couple of seasons, one game last few years, who sees his dreams changing with what the injuries, right? He had guys in his recruiting class who went to Alabama, or in 3 years in the NFL, I believe I saw a tweet, right? It's different for every individual player, but be a great success story to see him make a play special teams, make a play on defense. And UCLA, quite frankly, needs the depth beyond Medrano, who is going to be doing more and asked to do more, and maybe flex into a mini Latu role. You've got Oladejo, who can be all over the field, but that will bring wear and tear. So you hope backup-wise, Kaho can be there, special teams-wise, and just for sheer will and intensity of staying around, that he can make a difference for UCLA's team. The discipline, the enthusiasm, the respect, all the pillars Deshaun Foster wants, you can hope that Kaho can exemplify that by his journey as a UCLA player. 7 years, been to the program 4 years, a lot of those just battling injuries, seeing what the Chip Kelly era was, fighting through, earning that extra year just to earn his spot on this roster and continue to play. That just got to make you root for him all the more in this final season as a UCLA Bruin, and final year for him as a college football player, which you hope can dominate and earn himself an opportunity to play somewhere in the NFL in a position of success. For him, it had been at special teams. And with the way the NFL has changed special teams and kickoffs, that could be an increased role. Who can cover? Who can help on punt return, punt block, everything. Kaho can go make a name for himself, whether it's just an iron man of will to go forth as a UCLA Bruin. All right. In the meantime, that's going to do it for us. Get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. More fall camp coverage. We're talking basketball. We'll talk everything, and even some fall sports here on Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me what you think about, is UCLA a super tough job? Get your excited Bruins season ready. Game 1 around the corner here on Locked On UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.